So, this is going to be part one of my story. My story starts back in 2010. Um, at the time, no one in my family knew I was pregnant. None of my friends knew I was pregnant. My mom didn't figure out I was pregnant till I was actually in labor. She said what made her realize I was in labor when we were driving to the hospital and I made a comment about her hitting bumps. And she kind of put two and two together, and the doctors told her, hey, your daughter's in active labor. So, first of all, I would like to recommend if you're pregnant, no matter how painful it is or how scared you are, you should honestly tell someone. I was really lucky that my birth daughter had no health issues and was perfectly healthy, because at the time I was going to the gym like 4 or 5 times a week and working out. And honestly, it was a miracle for her to come out as healthy as she did. And they said she was full term. So I was really, really lucky there. So while we were at the hospital, I called my best friend at the time and told her, I'm in labor, can you come to the hospital? So her and her sister came up to the hospital. Then I was trying to get a hold of my brother. My brother was in college at the time at Sam Houston State, and I couldn't get a hold of him, so I called his ex-girlfriend at the time and told her what was going on. So she went and woke my brother up. And to this day, I'm still very grateful for her coming to the hospital with my brother, even though they had just broke up. She was willing to set that aside and be there for me, which was downright pretty awesome. So the first night after I given birth and everything, my mom told me, I'm going to bed. I'm not helping you. It is all on you. Well, at this point in time, my thoughts were swirling around, looking at this little baby, thinking, what am I going to do? And I made a promise to my daughter that she was going to be taken care of. That despite everything, I was going to do right by her. So the next day rolls around. They take her out of the room to test her. And me and my family at the time started having a real conversation on what we were going to do. My dad was at a fishing trip at this time because, like I said, no one knew I was pregnant. So he went on his fishing trip. And he told my mom, whatever you decide, I'll stick behind. And my mom and brother were kind of pushing me towards adoption. I was still wanting to keep my child. Wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but my mom said if I keep her, I'm on my own. She's not helping me. Well, she then left the room, and it was just me and my brother in the room. My brother sat down and told me, I can forgive you for a lot of things, but you mess up her life, I will never forgive you. And that was kind of my scared straight moment, as you could say. And I decided that adoption was the best. But I didn't want to close adoption. I wanted an open adoption. I didn't want my child to ever have to go and try to find me. I always wanted to be in her life. So if any questions came up, there was never a wonder. I could answer them to the best of my ability at whatever age she was at and whatever context it needed to be at. So the nurses brought in a list of adoption agency, and they said, pick one, we'll call them, we'll get you squared away. Well, they brought me a list of 3. I can't even remember what 2 of them were. The one that stuck out to me and just kept kind of calling me was Family Christian Homes. So I told him I want to go with this agency. So 2 agents from Family Christian Homes drove down to Abilene, started getting all my information, and they asked everything under the sun. We were calling family, asking who so-and-so die of, how old was so-and-so when they died. They want to know everything. Like, I had to be an open book because it was a faith-based organization. They asked me stuff, how often did I go to church? At the time, I was a non-believer. Having my daughter is what made me a believer, and we'll get into that in another part. But they wanted to know everything, like sexual orientation, did I ever experiment, and stuff like that. And when this took maybe 4 or 5 hours, and when we finished, they handed me 2 profiles of families, and they said, take these home, look over them, read them, make a decision, and then we can get everything set up from there. So I took the profiles home, sat down, read through them, and originally, I didn't pick the family that I have, the adopted family I had now. I was kind of swayed towards another group. But after going back again and talking to my family about it, because I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision, they told me to go back, read the profiles again, and I picked the adopted family that I have now just because certain things we had in common. The mom liked crafts. The dad liked to hunt and fish. I like both. And it was just kind of like there were a lot of things in common. Their last name was my godparents' last name. There's no relation with them, though. We asked that. So, before y'all start thinking we're related, we're not related. There were signs there. The guy I was dating at the time, he saw a license plate from Louisiana, which that's where they're from. I'm not saying we're in Louisiana. They're just from Louisiana. And just stuff started falling into place. The one thing I told the adoption agency, I'm not signing anything till I know for a fact she has a forever home and someone's coming to get her. Because that was my brother's biggest thing. He didn't want her going into foster care. Just because he had friends who had been in foster care and he kind of saw what it did to them. Not saying foster care is bad, but there are dark stories about it, and I didn't want that for her personally. So, part 2, we'll get into the day I signed my rights and everything, and get into more of that story. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep telling my story.